The struggle between Rome and Carthage spanned over a century, from the first clash in 265 down to the final destruction of Carthage in 146. The First and Second Wars were fought on a scale seldom rivaled until the modern era. Fleets of more than 300 oared warships, crewed by over 100,000 sailors, were employed by both sides in the First War, and in the Second War hundreds of thousands of men were recruited to fight in the rival armies. The cost of constructing so many galleys and paying, equipping, and feeding so many men consumed a great part of the resources of the two most powerful states in the Western Mediterranean. The human cost was even higher. In one battle alone in 216, the Romans and their allies lost around 50,000 dead. During the Second Punic War, a sizable part of Rome's adult male population perished, mostly in the first few years of the conflict. Casualties were not restricted to soldiers. Many civilians were massacred when one of the armies stormed a town or city. Others were killed by the raiding bands which ravaged the fields and villages controlled by the other side. And although the evidence for this is poor, we must assume that many, many more died from disease or starvation. Others were captured and enslaved, living out the remainder of their lives in squalid drudgery. By the end of the conflict, Carthage was in ruins, its life as a state ended, and its culture almost totally extinguished. Between 265 and 146, Rome rose from being a purely Italian power into a position of unrivaled dominance throughout the Mediterranean basin, and was well on her way to creating the empire which would control Western Europe, North Africa, and the Near East for more than 5 centuries. The intervention in Sicily, which led to the confrontation with Carthage, was the first occasion that a Roman army was sent outside Italy. Roman imperialism did not begin with the Punic Wars, since by 265 Rome had already absorbed all of the Italian peninsula south of the river Po, but it was greatly accelerated by the struggle with Carthage. The Punic Wars accustomed the Romans to waging war on an enormous scale, sending armies further and further afield to fight in several widely separated theatres simultaneously. The eventual victory over Carthage confirmed the deep-seated determination with which the Romans waged war, and which was to make them so difficult to defeat. Had the Romans lost the Punic Wars, then the history of the world would have been very different. At the very least, such a defeat would have seriously retarded Roman expansion, and it might well have ended it forever. The centuries of Roman rule had a profound effect on their empire, especially in Western Europe, both directly and through the revival of the Renaissance. As Europeans colonized America and established great overseas empires, they spread their Latin-based languages, legal systems, and culture throughout the rest of the globe. None of this need have happened if the Romans had lost in 241, or succumbed to Hannibal's onslaught.